In a world where art is meant to reflect the diversity of the human spirit, why do we still find the walls of the most prestigious galleries so white? The brushstrokes, the visions so rich with life, are left unacknowledged, unseen by the ones who hold the power to elevate them. Talent waits in silence, and yet the doors remain closed. How many masterpieces go unnoticed, simply because of the color of the artist's skin? How long will this injustice continue? And who will finally stand up to break this silent barrier? The camera slowly pulls back from Derek's weary face, his eyes still fixed on the empty gallery walls. It's not just the art that's missing, it's the people. Derek's thoughts are interrupted by the buzzing of his phone. He reluctantly picks it up to see a rejection email from another prestigious exhibition. He lets out a long, frustrated sigh, the weight of the constant rejection heavy on his shoulders. Derek, muttering to himself, another no. What do they want from me? My work isn't enough. He stands up, pacing across his cluttered studio. The paintings lining the walls, each filled with the passion of his soul, remain hidden in the shadows unnoticed. Derek grabs a half-finished canvas, staring at it for a long time, his brush hovering above the surface. He's lost in thought, the air thick with doubt. Lana, his mother, entering the room with a concerned look. You can't keep doing this to yourself, Derek. You've got more to offer than any of them will ever see. You can't let their ignorance take away your spirit. Derek, voice strained, shaking his head. But it's not enough, Mom. It's never enough. Lana places a gentle hand on his shoulder. You're not fighting for them, son. You're fighting for you. As Derek looks at his mother, her words linger in the air, and a quiet resolve begins to form within him. Derek sat at his small desk, staring at the blank page in front of him. The rejection email had burned in his hands for what felt like hours. Not the right fit, they said. We're looking for something more commercially viable. His mind replayed the same words over and over. The words stung, the familiar sting of being overlooked, not because of the quality of his work, but because of the color of his skin. His hands trembled slightly as he clicked on the next email. Another gallery had declined his request for a showing. He rubbed his eyes, the exhaustion of constantly fighting this invisible wall seeping into his bones. There were moments when he wanted to give up, when the weight of it all felt too heavy. His own mother's voice echoed in his mind, telling him not to give up, but every rejection felt like another reminder that the system was stacked against him. Derek, with a bitter laugh, commercially viable, what does that even mean? Are they really going to tell me that my art doesn't matter because it doesn't fit their mold? Just then, his phone buzzed again. It was another gallery owner. He let out a frustrated sigh before answering. Gallery owner. On the other end, polite but distant. Derek, I appreciate the submission, but as I've said before, your work, well, it's just not what we're looking for at this time. We've had discussions here, and the market for your style is well limited. Derek, gritting his teeth, trying to hold it together. I get it. Limited. Because I'm not who you want me to be. It's not the work, is it? Gallery owner, pauses. Look, it's just business. Nothing personal, Derek. We've got a lot of artists to consider. Derek hung up without another word. He didn't need to hear the rest. The words business and market were just code for something else, something unspoken but understood. Derek slammed his phone down on the desk, his breath shallow. Derek, to himself almost whispering, am I just supposed to keep doing this forever? Keep banging on the door that won't open? The quiet of his studio wrapped around him, suffocating. He stood up, pacing back and forth. His eyes darted to the canvases stacked against the walls, unfinished, unloved, and unappreciated. He had poured his soul into these pieces, and yet no one cared. No one ever seemed to care. He thought back to a conversation he'd had with Lana, his mother, just a few weeks earlier. Lana, her voice gentle but firm. Derek, you can't let them do this to you. You've got talent. Don't let their rejection stop you from doing what you're meant to do. You're not fighting for them. You're fighting for yourself. But was he really fighting for himself? He was tired. The constant battle felt like a never-ending loop, the pain of rejection, the doubt, and the frustration eating away at him every day. Derek's gaze drifted to the window, where the late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds. It was a beautiful day, but all he could see was a world that didn't seem to have a place for him. Derek, with growing anger, how much longer can I keep this up? How long before I just let it go? But even as those words left his lips, something shifted inside him. The thought of quitting, of letting them win, was unbearable. Derek clenched his fists at his sides. He wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Not without a fight. The phone buzzed again, but this time, Derek didn't pick it up. He didn't need to hear any more empty words. Instead, he turned toward the canvases, his determination slowly growing. Maybe he couldn't change the world on his own, but he wasn't going to let this silent war define him. The conflict had been laid bare. The art world was not kind to artists of color. It wasn't just about being good enough. It was about being seen, recognized, and valued for what they truly brought to the table. And Derek was done being invisible. The phone call was the last straw. Derek had been hanging on by a thread, and the call from the museum curator just snapped it. They'd told him his exhibition proposal had been rejected, again. It was a message he had heard too many times before, but this time, it was different. The tone of the curator's voice was colder, more dismissive. "Curator," through the phone. "Derek, we've reviewed your work, but it just doesn't fit our theme for this season. We're really looking for something that appeals to a broader audience. I'm sure you understand." Derek, his voice shaking, barely able to keep it steady. "Appeals to a broader audience? What does that mean? Are you telling me that my art isn't appealing enough because it's not what you want?" Curator sighs. "It's nothing personal. It's just business. Maybe there's a better fit for you elsewhere." The words echoed in Derek's mind long after the call ended. Business. Broader audience. He knew what that really meant. It wasn't about the quality of his work. It was about something deeper, something ingrained in the very fabric of the art world, racism. Derek slammed the phone down, his frustration boiling over. Derek, yelling to himself, "Why am I still fighting for a seat at a table that doesn't even want me?" His hands balled into fists, and his breath grew shallow. He wanted to throw everything, his brushes, his paints, the canvases he'd spent months on. But instead, he stood frozen, facing the stark reality that no matter how hard he worked, how much talent he poured into his art, the doors remained shut. Lana entered the room, her face creased with concern. She had heard Derek's outburst from the other side of the door. Lana, softly but with authority. "Son, don't let this break you. You know this world will try to keep you down, but you can't give them that power." Derek, his voice a mix of bitterness and exhaustion. "Don't you get it, Mom? They don't want me. It's not about talent. It's not about what I create. It's about who I am. They'll never accept me. Not truly. Not until I fit into their mold, and I won't. I can't." Lana shakes her head, stepping closer to him. "You don't have to fit into their mold, Derek. You just have to keep being you. You are enough, whether they see it or not. And you know what? There are others out there who will see you." Derek didn't answer immediately. His mind raced, but the weight of it all felt too heavy to lift. The world felt too big, too indifferent. His art, his passion, seemed so small in comparison to the power structures he was up against. How many more exhibitions would he have to be turned away from? How many more doors would slam in his face before he finally broke? But Lana wasn't done. She always knew how to ground him when the storm inside his mind raged. "Lana," her voice steady but with undeniable conviction, "I didn't raise you to give up, and you're not going to start now. You'll find a way. Maybe it's not the way you thought it would be, but you're not alone, Derek. You never have been." Derek, looking at his mother, feeling a flicker of something, maybe hope, maybe defiance, spark inside him. "And what if it's too late, Mom? What if I'm just wasting my time? No one's giving me a chance." Lana, smiling softly but with unwavering strength. "You haven't even begun to fight, son. Don't you dare say it's too late." The silence that followed was thick with unsaid words, but Derek felt something shift inside of him. Maybe he hadn't fought back enough. Maybe he hadn't yet found the strength to push through the wall they had built around him. But he wasn't ready to quit. Not yet. The next day, Derek sat at his desk, his phone silent on the table in front of him. He stared at the blank canvas across from him, but instead of the usual weight of despair, he felt a spark, small but growing. He couldn't keep going down the same path, fighting alone, hoping that a system built on exclusion would one day change its mind. But what if he didn't need their approval? What if there was another way? Derek wasn't sure yet, but he knew one thing: he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The weight of the day had been unbearable. Derek sat in his cramped apartment, staring at the same rejection letter he'd received a few hours earlier. The gallery had declined his offer to showcase his work again. "Not the right fit for the theme," they said. "Limited appeal," they wrote. Derek couldn't help but feel like those words were only a polite way of saying that his work, his very soul, wasn't worthy. That he, as a person, didn't belong in their world of curated, celebrated art. Derek, to himself bitterly, how many times can they say not the right fit? How many more doors will they close before I finally realize this is all a waste of time? His hands trembled as he crumpled the letter, tossing it onto the table. The frustration, the confusion, and the hopelessness all seemed to flood his chest. For a moment, the walls of his small apartment closed in on him. This wasn't just about his art anymore. This was about his place in a world that seemed determined to exclude him. No matter how much talent he had, no matter how much heart he poured into his creations. Lana walked in quietly, seeing the devastation written all over Derek's face. She had always been able to read him like an open book, but this time, there was something different. The spark in his eyes, the fire that had driven him forward for so long, seemed to have flickered out. Lana, with gentle concern. "Derek, what happened?" Derek didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. His mother already knew what had happened. She could see the rejection, the failure etched in his expression. She sat down beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Derek," his voice breaking, shaking with frustration. "It's not about the art, Mom. They don't want to see me. They just want what they're comfortable with. And I'm not it. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, they don't want to give me a chance. I'm just not good enough, not for them." Lana, with firm resolve. "Derek, that's a lie. You're good enough. But those people, they won't see it, not yet. They've got their own rules, their own limitations, and they'll use whatever they can to keep you out. But that doesn't mean your art isn't worthy." Derek, with a bitter laugh, tears welling up. "They don't care, Mom. They never will. This is who I am. This is what I do, and I've been fighting for so long. It's like I'm invisible, and no matter how loud I scream, they still won't listen. I'm done. I'm done trying to be something they'll never accept." Lana, her voice soft but with undeniable strength. "You're not invisible, Derek. And you're not done. You've got more in you than they'll ever understand. I know it feels like you've hit a wall, but walls don't stop you unless you let them. You've got something that they don't, your truth, your voice. And no one can take that from you." Derek stood up abruptly, his chest tight with emotion. He paced the room, running his fingers through his hair in frustration. "Derek," shouting now, "do you think I don't know that? I've been fighting this fight every damn day, Mom. I'm exhausted. I've put everything I have into this, and it's never enough. I keep thinking that one day, maybe someone will notice me, that maybe, just maybe, I'll get the chance to show them what I can do. But all I get is rejection after rejection. How much longer can I keep doing this? How much longer can I keep pretending that this isn't tearing me apart?" Lana stood up and walked toward him, placing her hand on his cheek. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep understanding and love. "Lana," calmly but firmly, "you don't have to do this alone, Derek. You've never been alone. And you don't have to keep fighting the same fight. The world may not be ready for you, but that doesn't mean you're not meant for this. Maybe it's time to stop asking for their approval. You've already got what they can't give you, your talent, your vision, your heart." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with unspoken truths. Derek's shoulders slumped as he let out a shaky breath. He had reached the breaking point, but something in his mother's words, something in the unwavering strength she had always shown him, began to shift something deep inside him. He wasn't done. Not yet. "Derek," with newfound resolve, "maybe you're right, Mom. Maybe I've been fighting the wrong battle. It's not about them. It's about me, about what I can do. And I'm not done yet." For the first time in a long while, Derek felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the world wasn't ready to see him. Maybe they never would. But that didn't mean he couldn't find another way, a way that didn't rely on their approval, their acceptance. It was time to find his own path. The real fight was just beginning. The morning after his breakdown, Derek stood in front of his easel, staring at the blank canvas. The weight of the rejection letters still hung heavy in his chest, but something had shifted. His mother's words, "You don't need their approval. You don't have to fit into their mold," still echoed in his mind. He hadn't been ready to hear them the night before, but now they rang loud and clear. Derek, muttering to himself, "I don't need their approval. I don't have to fit into their mold." He dipped his brush into the paint, his movements hesitant at first. But then, the familiar rhythm of creation took over. With every stroke, every color, a sense of liberation washed over him. This wasn't about fitting in anymore. This was about being unapologetically himself. Each brushstroke was a declaration of his right to exist in the art world on his terms, without asking for permission. Hours passed without Derek realizing how much time had slipped away. The canvas, once empty, was now filled with bold, expressive strokes, raw and unfiltered. This wasn't about perfect technique, it was about truth. It was about him. Finally, Derek had let go of the restraints he had imposed on himself, choosing to create something that was undeniably his. Lana walked in quietly, her gaze immediately drawn to the canvas. She had seen Derek create countless pieces over the years, but this was different. There was life in the paint, a fierceness in the strokes. It was a reflection of his soul, not just his talent. Lana, softly with pride. "That's your best work yet, Derek. I can see it in every inch of it. You've poured your soul into this one." Derek, pausing, wiping sweat from his brow, a tired but satisfied smile crossing his face. "I don't care what they think anymore, Mom. This is me. It's who I am, and it's about time I stopped hiding it." Lana, stepping closer, her voice warm. "I've always known you had it in you. But sometimes, it's not about finding the perfect opportunity or the right door. It's about creating your own path. This piece, this is your path." Lana's words were like a spark that ignited something inside Derek. He realized he didn't need to keep waiting for the art world to accept him. He didn't need to wait for their validation. Now, he was going to carve out his own space. He wasn't just an artist hoping for a chance. He was creating that chance for himself. With renewed determination, Derek grabbed his phone and started scrolling through contacts he had avoided for months. He'd spent so much time waiting for someone to reach out to him, but now it was his turn to make the call. He began reaching out to local galleries, small artist collectives, and even other artists who had been overlooked by the mainstream art world. He was done waiting for permission. He was making his own opportunities. Derek, on the phone, voice full of conviction. "Hi, I'm Derek. I'm an artist, and I'd like to talk about showcasing my work. I know I'm not the usual artist you feature, but I believe you're missing something special. Let's make something happen." With every call he made, Derek felt a surge of empowerment. It didn't matter how small or insignificant the conversations seemed. Each one felt like a step towards something bigger. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was taking control of his own destiny. By the time evening fell, Derek had arranged a small exhibition at a local independent gallery. It wasn't the grand debut he had dreamed of, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Lana entered the room, watching Derek with a proud smile as he arranged his paintings. He was no longer just a hopeful artist waiting for a break. He was a force, determined and unstoppable. "Lana," her voice full of quiet pride. "You did it, didn't you? You found your way." Derek, nodding, eyes blazing with new fire. "I'm not waiting anymore. This is just the beginning." As the night fell, Derek stood tall, ready for whatever came next. He had taken the first step toward creating his own future, and nothing could stop him now. The night of the exhibition, Derek stood in the gallery, surrounded by the pieces that had once felt like mere dreams. The room buzzed with energy, people milling about, admiring the bold colors and raw emotion on the walls. For the first time in years, Derek felt seen. He had taken control of his own fate, and it felt nothing short of liberating. He glanced over at Lana, who stood nearby, her eyes shining with pride. She had always believed in him, even when he couldn't see it himself. Tonight, however, was different. This wasn't just about having a gallery show. It was about proving to himself that he wasn't invisible, that his art, his voice mattered. Derek, smiling, his voice steady. This is what it feels like, isn't it? To finally have people see you for who you really are." Lana, her voice soft, yet filled with a quiet joy. "You've always been seen, Derek. But tonight, you're showing the world who you truly are. And they're finally starting to understand." As the night wore on, Derek's confidence grew. People approached him, asking about his work, discussing the meanings behind his pieces. A few even expressed interest in purchasing some of the paintings. Derek was on cloud nine, but it wasn't the potential sales that fueled him, it was the validation. He was no longer waiting for someone to tell him he was good enough. Tonight, he was showing the world exactly who he was and what he was capable of. But then, just as Derek was talking to an art critic from a local magazine, a familiar voice interrupted him. Gallery owner, with a forced smile. "Derek, it's good to see you here. I see you've managed to pull this together. Impressive, really." Derek froze for a moment, feeling the weight of the past wash over him. The gallery owner was one of the people who had turned him away years ago, citing his work as too unconventional for their prestigious gallery. The sting of those words had never fully gone away. Now seeing this man stand before him, trying to offer a polite compliment, Derek felt a rush of emotions, anger, pride, and a deep sense of justice. "Derek," his voice cold but firm, "I don't need your validation anymore. But I appreciate you showing up. The gallery owner's smile faltered, but Derek didn't care. He had crossed a line, not just in his art, but in his own understanding of his worth. He didn't need their approval anymore. This was his moment, and no one could take that away from him. As the night continued, Derek felt a weight lift off his chest. His fears, his doubts, had all been silenced by the simple act of standing in this room, surrounded by people who appreciated his work. But more than that, it was the realization that he had done it on his own. He hadn't waited for someone to open the door. He had kicked it down himself. Lana, stepping up beside him, her voice warm. I knew you had it in you, son. But tonight, you've shown the world who you really are. You've taken your place. Derek looked around at the people gathered, the vibrant energy in the room. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with himself. He wasn't fighting for recognition anymore. He had earned it. He had earned his place in the art world. And he was ready for whatever came next. Derek, with quiet confidence, looking at Lana. This is just the beginning, Mom. I've only just started. Lana smiled, her heart full. Derek wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a force that couldn't be ignored. And as the evening wore on, with people continuing to admire his work, Derek knew that he had finally taken the step he had always dreamed of. He was here. He was seen. And nothing could take that away from him now. The exhibition had ended, but the night still lingered in Derek's mind like the sweet taste of a victory he hadn't dared to dream of. The gallery had emptied, and now the only sounds were the soft hum of the air conditioning and the rustle of papers in his bag. Yet, the silence was comforting. It was the kind of silence that came after a storm, when everything settles and the true weight of what had just happened becomes clear. As Derek packed up his things, he glanced around the room one last time. The paintings that had once sat in his studio, waiting for a chance to be seen, now hung on the walls, appreciated by strangers, critics, and friends alike. There were people talking about his work, praising his raw emotion, and discussing its depth. For the first time, Derek didn't feel invisible. For the first time, his voice was heard. He wasn't just a hopeful artist anymore. He was someone who had found his place. Lana approached him, her face full of quiet pride. She had watched him struggle for so long, and now, seeing him stand here, in his element, was more than she could have imagined. She had always known he had it in him, but now, everyone else would know it too. Lana, smiling, her voice thick with emotion. You did it, Derek. You've made your mark. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Derek nodded, his face softening with a smile of his own. He could feel the weight of the night lifting off his shoulders, but there was something deeper in his chest, a satisfaction that came from knowing he had stayed true to himself. Derek, quietly but with newfound confidence. It's not just the beginning, Mom. It's a new chapter. I'm done waiting. This is my path, and no one can take it from me. As they made their way toward the door, Derek's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a message from one of the local galleries that had turned him down in the past. He hesitated for a moment, but then, with a sense of peace, he opened the message. Gallery message. We've seen your work at the exhibition. We're interested in featuring you in an upcoming show. Please get in touch. Derek smiled a knowing smile. It wasn't about them reaching out. It was about him knowing that he had earned this. He had done the work, fought the fight, and now, he wasn't just asking for a seat at the table. He had built his own table. Derek, texting back, his tone firm. Thank you for your interest. I'll get in touch soon. But for now, I'm working on something new. He put the phone back in his pocket, feeling the weight of his decisions settle in. The world had never been kind to him, but it had never mattered less. He had found his voice, and that was more than enough. Lana, as they walked outside, her voice full of warmth. You've always had it, Derek. You just needed to see it for yourself. Derek stopped for a moment, looking up at the sky. The stars were just beginning to appear, scattered like small lights in the vast expanse. It felt like the world had opened up for him in ways he never imagined. He wasn't done yet, there was still so much left to do, so much left to create, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Derek, taking a deep breath, his voice steady. Yeah, I see it now. As they drove home, Derek looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. He wasn't waiting anymore. He had taken control, not just of his art, but of his life. And this was just the beginning of a journey that would take him places he'd once only dreamed of. Tonight, he had shown the world who he was. But more importantly, he had shown himself. And that was the greatest victory of all. The story of Derek is one of perseverance, self-discovery, and reclaiming power in a world that often seeks to silence those who don't conform. For years, Derek faced rejection from the art world, not because his talent was lacking, but because he didn't fit the mold they had set. Time and again, he was told that his work was not what they were looking for, that his voice didn't resonate with their narrow expectations. It wasn't just a professional battle, it was personal. It felt like the world was telling him he wasn't enough, that his identity, his art, didn't belong. But Derek's story teaches us something profoundly important. Sometimes, you have to stop waiting for permission. You have to stop begging for recognition and start creating your own opportunities. Derek's turning point came not when someone finally noticed his work, but when he decided on his own that his worth wasn't determined by anyone else's approval. He didn't need to fit into their narrow vision of what art was. Instead, he embraced his own truth and created work that was raw, powerful, and unapologetically him. Through this, we learn that success doesn't always come through following the rules or waiting for someone to give us a chance. Sometimes, it's about having the courage to redefine those rules and carve out our own path. Like Derek, we all have the power to turn rejection into motivation and to show the world that our voices matter. In the end, Derek's triumph wasn't just about his art. It was about owning his place in the world, standing tall, and saying, "I am enough." This story reminds us that no matter our age or the obstacles we face, it's never too late to make a change and take control of our destiny. After reading Derek's journey of overcoming rejection and finding his own path, we can't help but wonder, how often do we let society's standards or others' expectations define our worth? And what would happen if we, like Derek, decided to stop waiting for approval and start creating our own opportunities? Have you ever faced a moment when you had to challenge the system or push through adversity to follow your true passion? Share your thoughts and experiences with us. Let's start a conversation about perseverance, self-worth, and the power of taking control of our own futures. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with others who might need that push to keep going.